Good day, and welcome to the Tom's Hardware Show. I'm Jared Walton, and I'm flying solo today. Paul is on vacation. I will be on vacation next week, so no show next week for those of you who actually regularly turn in, but that's okay. We are going to be looking at GPU profitability today. So it's no secret, cryptocurrency prices have crashed. They're looking terrible. And everyone who once thought they were sitting on piles of money because they had all this cryptocurrency, if they haven't sold it off, they're now sitting on a lot less potential money. Now they can hold it and hope the prices go back up on Bitcoin and Ethereum, or they can cut their losses or whatever. That's up to them to choose what they do. But I am going to be talking about kind of some of the options of what's happened over the past year. Before we get there, a few things. First, tell me if my audio is good or not. Last week, I actually, sorry, alarm. Last week, I accidentally had broadcast off on the audio, but there wasn't a lot of noise last week, thankfully. Anyway, let me know if things are sounding choppy. If they are, I will just turn off NVIDIA broadcast. I've tried to do a hack. It says set the affinity for your audio DG and for NVIDIA broadcast to just one CPU core, set its priority to like real time, and hopefully that works. I also changed the sampling rate to 44,100 hertz instead of 48,000 hertz. There was another thing that said sometimes that caused a problem. Anyway, for anyone who's on here listening, if my audio is crapping out or chopping up or whatever, please let me know and I will do what I can to correct it. All right, let's go ahead and I love that picture. We're gonna, cue Kenny Rogers, the gambler, or Devil Went Down to Georgia, or whatever you want to call it. Let's talk about mining stuff. But before we do that, let's talk about the news of the week. This here is the awesomely amazing, super high performance GeForce GTX 1630. We haven't gotten one for benchmarking yet. I'm trying to get one, but pretty much we know it's going to suck, or at least it's going to be really slow. It's the same TU117 core as in the GTX 1650. Of note, that is not the 1650 Super. So the Super uses the TU116, which has the Turing Nvidia Inc. hardware. The TU117 has the Volta hardware, which is pretty much Pascal's NV Inc. It's not as advanced. But anyway, so GTX 1630 cuts the number of streaming multiprocessors down to just 16. And that gives you 512 CUDA cores. Not a lot. In fact, that's really low. Clocks are okay. Then you get 4 gigabytes of GDDR6 memory on a 64-bit interface, which is half the memory bandwidth basically as a 1650. It's 12 gigabits per second memory. So lots of yuck going all around. Early benchmarks from those who have managed to get one indicate that this is roughly the same performance as the 5 years old, something like that, GTX 1050 Ti, which isn't too surprising. Like if you look at their compute performance, they're relatively close. Turing architecture means it's got concurrent floating point and integer processing. So NVIDIA says that gives it like a 30% potential boost in performance. And when you look at the math, it's like, well, that ends up pretty close. And then you go, well, the 1050 Ti had a 128-bit bus, but it also had GDDR6 memory running at 8 gigabits per second. This has a 64-bit bus, half as wide, running at 12 gigabits per second, so 50% more theoretical bandwidth. Turing had better lossless memory compression and memory controller stuff. So the net result is they're saying it's roughly the same performance as a 1050 Ti, priced higher than the 1050 Ti when it launched 5 years ago. As Mike Brizone points out, there are no GTX 1630. He actually corrects that. 1630 in the channel right now. That is correct. They're not on Newegg. They're not to be found. I don't know if these are being primarily sold to OEMs. I suspect that is very likely the case. So, it allows Dell and HP and whoever to sell a system and go, we've got a GeForce GTX card. It sucks, but we've got a GTX card. So unless these are like priced, this should replace the 1030. This should not be something that you buy as an upgrade for any reasonable GPU, and it certainly shouldn't cost $150 or more. So our article on this, it's basically like, this thing actually makes the Radeon 6400, the RX 6400, look good, because the RX 6400 has infinity cache and performs like 40% faster or something, 30% faster. I don't know. It's bad. Don't get a GTX 1630. Next up, we talked about this a bit last week. Threadripper Pro. AMD has officially revealed their, what do you call it? Their not OEM, their end user pricing for Threadripper Pro. So you no longer have to buy a Lenovo or Dell workstation to get Threadripper Pro. You can now get the WX 5000 series Threadripper Pro processors. So here's the kicker. The 5995WX suggested e-tail pricing is $6,500, which is a huge jump up from the old 3990X. So there's a 3995WX, which was Threadripper Pro, and came with 8 memory channels and came with 128 PCI Express lanes. Then there was the high-end desktop HEDT 3990X, which had half the memory channels and 72 PCI Express lanes. Anyway, that was 3990. So this new processor is basically 50% more expensive. And as you go down the rest of the line, the 5975WX is suggested price of $3,300 for a 32-core processor. When you look at the Threadripper 3970X, their last 32-core Threadripper, not Threadripper Pro, right? That was $2,000. So again, that's more than a 50% increase in price. And you get double the memory channels and double the PCI Express lane. And then finally, there's the Threadripper Pro 5965WX, which is the 24-core part, $2,400. So you're paying $100 per core. And that goes up, I guess, against the Threadripper 3960X, which was the 4-channel version. So if you're thinking, oh, well, more memory channels, that's good. For workstations, for certain users, yes, I would say more memory channels is a good thing. Like, you can do high-end compute stuff. For the enthusiast market, for high-end desktop, that is totally, it's placebo almost. Like, maybe a few things help, but you'll need to go to ECC memory. There's all sorts of concerns, and the increase in price is, again, rather large. Actually, so the 3960X was $1,400. This is $2,400 for the 5965WX. So all around, way more expensive. It's basically the end of the era. High-end desktop, unless Intel does something with it, it's kind of dead. AMD is effectively killing it off. Now you either go workstation, buy a Threadripper Pro, or you go with the high-end consumer model like the 5950X, which totally makes sense. And I get the end of the HEDT selling point because we've already got things with 16 cores. They overlap with that. So I'm not super worried about it, but it is an increase in the net pricing if you want to jump from consumer to the next level. All right, next up, this is an obscure image. This is supposed to be like an AMD CPU. AMD was allegedly hacked and had a bunch of data stolen in the past. We don't know exactly when the hack occurred. AMD says it's investigating. They say what did they say? Like 500 gigabytes of data, something like that, was stolen, potentially stolen. 450 gigabyte data theft by Ransom House, an extortionist that I believe they want Bitcoin. Yay, cryptocurrency. It's used for so many good things, right? Uh, so they're investigating it. 450 gigabytes, it's not as big as the Lapsus Nvidia hack, which was, I think, terabytes of data, but it is pretty big. They haven't leaked anything yet, and the hackers Ransom House did just say like, "Hey, we they didn't pay our ransom fee," is effectively what they said, which I'm totally okay with. It'll be interesting to see if anything comes out of this. I mean, did they get some RDNA 3 information? Did they get Zen 4 information that we haven't heard? I don't know. So let's move on. Other news and leaks. These are not hacks. This is just news. Intel's Raptor Lake is now starting to show up in early leaks of performance. And Raptor Lake is their sequel to Alder Lake. They will run in the same LGA 1700 socket. And they are tuning and increasing performance. I think the one benchmark showed like 20% better multi-threaded performance. And we'll see, like, the fact that they're leaking these now, that people have engineering samples in hand. There was actually an engineering sample on sale on some third-party site. I don't think it was eBay. It was someone else that sold over in Asia. You know, if you've got the right BIOS and you've got an LGA 1600 motherboard, theoretically you could drop one of these in and test it. So people have been doing that, and it's kind of interesting. That means to me mostly that we should be seeing Raptor Lake sooner than later. Like, when you start seeing leaks like this, it usually means no more than a couple months wait before the official launch. So yeah, keep your eye out for Raptor Lake. I actually expect Zen 4 will launch in a relatively similar time frame. So we'll see how that goes. And finally, hey, last week we talked about mobile ARC performance. And this is Intel's own performance numbers. So we didn't run these benchmarks, which, you know, you can kind of tell by the game selection. I mean, Age of Empires 4, almost no one benchmarks that. Apex Legends, people do benchmark that, but it's not super demanding. Battlefield 5, Control, Destiny 2, those are okay. Dota 2, it's an esports game. Some places benchmark it. I mean, I'm not super sold on the esports benchmarks. Like, I think once you go beyond 144 hertz and 144 FPS, that you don't see massive benefit. F1 2021, Grand Theft Auto 5, that's what, 7 years old for the PC version now? And we don't know exactly what settings. Actually, I think I could pull up the information, but this is from the reviewer guide. Hitman 3, that's an Intel-sponsored game. Naraka Blade Point. Nijan, which hits the frame rate cap of 200 FPS on all the cards. PUBG. Riftbreaker. Riftbreaker is supposed to be getting XESS, so that's something. Total War Troy. Not the latest Total War game. Warframe, not super demanding as far as games go. Wolfenstein Youngblood, same thing. None of these have like ray tracing enabled, even if the game supports it. And by Intel's own admission right now, with their current drivers over in China, if you have an A380, you're getting like 10% less performance than the 6400 and 15% less performance. I don't know, that my percentages are probably off. Anyway, it's like the 6400 is about 10% faster, I should say. And the 1650 is almost 20% faster than the ARC A380. So again, ARC late to the party. All right. That's it for news of the week, the happenings. And now let's go on to talk about cryptocurrencies. Before I do that, let's just like a few disclaimers. Don't make judgments based on the first charts. I've got like 4 different versions of the chart showing different options for how to sell cryptocurrency and what you might have made. So my assertion is there's a lot of miners out there that lost money on cryptocurrency mining over the past 2 years. And it all depends on what you paid for the card, when you started mining, and when you sold or didn't sell your Ethereum. I'm doing all of this based off Ethereum because for GPU mining, that was like uh, it was like 99 or 98% of the mining power from GPUs probably went to Ethereum. And so when Ethereum goes proof of stake, if it does, when it goes proof of stake, like they've been talking about for 2-3 years now, and it hasn't happened, mining dies. And what in the world will all these GPU miners do without Ethereum? And that's a good question. They'll probably stop mining. They'll probably sell off their GPUs. They're probably already selling off their GPUs because if you have like a 3090 right now and you're out there trying to make money, this is just off whattomine.com. Their calculations say if you have a 3090 and you're running it 24/7, you are making about 84 cents per day on Ethereum mining after power costs, and that's using 10 cents per kilowatt hour, which let's say you live in a more expensive place and it's 50 cents per kilowatt hour, you're down to 48 cents profit. Hey, what if you got cheap power and you only pay 5 cents per kilowatt hour? Well, then you're making $1.25 off of a card. So yes, some people are still mining. It's not totally dead, but it is dying fast. And even the large scale places are probably selling it off. So number one mining card in past 60 days is the 1060. I would believe that. I mean, it's a cheap card. It doesn't use a lot of power. There are lots of them out there. Anyway, let's go to the slides. So this is the Nvidia side of things. Now, let me tell you about my calculations. I put in an approximate GPU price based off of my recollections of what it was like at launch. Yeah, like everything sold out, but let's say you paid scalper prices because when a lot of these cards launched, like in September of 2020, cryptocurrency mining wasn't a huge thing yet. The prices weren't super high. I mean, Ethereum was in the $300, $400, $500 range, something like that. So like at launch, I even said in the 3080 review, I'm like, hey, this can do almost 100 mega hash per second, but that's actually not enough to make it super compelling because that was only like $2.50 a day. And then all of a sudden Ethereum shot up to, I think it hit a maximum of $4,800. So if you manage to buy a card from a scalper off eBay in early September or mid-September of 2020, you probably paid like $1,200. And at the time that seemed obscene. And then cryptocurrency took off and the prices shot up even more. 3090s, I mean, they were going for well over $2,000. 3070s, a month later, they were going for about $1,000 at launch. 3060 Ti 900. And then by the time the 3060 rolled around, oh, I've got the wrong dates on the 3060 Ti. Sorry. That was in December 2nd, not February 25th. Anyway, by the time the 3060 rolled around on February 25th, cryptocurrency had shot way up. So it sold at launch for like $750. So if you mine since start of the cards being available, which is kind of not really likely, but let's just roll with that, and you optimize the performance and just mine 24/7 and you sold nothing, then that's where the total ETH mined line comes in. So you could have 2.7 Ethereum from the 3090, almost 2.3 from the 3080, only 1.2 from the 3070. So the 3060 Ti is all screwed up because I have the wrong data in, so my formulas didn't update properly. Sorry on that. The 3060 Ti should be like 1.1. So ignore that one. 3060, because it came later and it started at a higher price, you're in the red. So that's option one. Here's the AMD side of things. Again, approximate prices, paying scalper prices at launch, which were lower than what we saw a few months later, but just estimates. You can see because of its higher price, the 6900 XT is in the red. 6700 XT and 6600 XT are well into the red because they had higher prices due to demand and they didn't mine as long. So, half an Ethereum sold today is worth not that much money, frankly speaking. Okay, so that's option one. That's the mining since the cards became available, which probably not many people did. Option two is, what if you jumped on the bandwagon in June of last year? And this time I used eBay prices approximate. I'm actually underestimating the eBay prices by 10% because maybe you got a good deal. Still, you can see like the prices are higher here than what I showed on the previous slide. People were paying $2,000 and more for a 3080 and $2,500, almost $3,000 in some cases for a 3090 as recent as 1 year and 1 month ago. If you bought a card for that price and mined 24/7, now because difficulty shot up, the 3090 only would have mined 0.88 Ethereum, which at today's value, and this is probably off because the value has been changing. I mean, right now, Ethereum sits at, according to CoinMarketCap, it's at just over $1,000. Bitcoin's at just under $19,000. And that's I believe those are, they're not the lowest we've seen all year because there was a brief spike down to right at $1,000 on, let me see, where is that? No, sorry, it wasn't $1,000. I had the wrong chart. So Ethereum went down to $890 or some such on June 18th. And now it went back up and now it's falling again more slowly. So there's this concern, I know some people try and do the market analysis. I think cryptocurrencies are super volatile and that makes it hard to do accurate analysis. And there's a lot of factors going on and they're not regulated by the SEC or other groups. And so it's the Wild West. People are predicting they'll continue to fall. Other people are predicting they're going to shoot back up. I don't know which it is. But I can see all of the cards from Nvidia would be in the red if you only started mining in June. And that's counting the GPU cost. So you could sell the GPU today and recover some of that money. I didn't get into that. I didn't get into the price of the PC. That's not the point. What about AMD's side of things? Even worse because, I don't know if it was even worse. The 3090 is really bad. 3080 is really bad because of their super high prices. AMD's side, most cards you're looking at potentially $600 to $1,100 lost. I meant to delete the 6600 XT. There's another column that shouldn't be there. Ignore the 6600 XT because it most certainly didn't cost $58 at launch. And it wasn't available until August 11th of 2021, which is why, since I started this one at June 1st, I'm like, well, that doesn't really count. Okay, so everything's in the red. Third option, what if you just sold off all of your Ethereum as you went? You didn't take any risk on that side of things. You bought the card on March 1st. Those are the March 1st approximate eBay prices from my eBay scraping. And then you mined, so you would mine 483 days with all of the Nvidia cards because they were all available. The 6600 XT and 6700 XT launched a bit later. So you can see now that's a few more days mining than the last slides were. Prices on the GPUs were in general higher and you're in the red on all of these. But if you sold those cards now, I mean, you could still easily get $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 for 3090, I think. So you could sell the card today and you'd be in the profit margin, which is why there's a lot of Ethereum miners or mining groups in general that are selling off hardware because they're like, hey, we're in the red, but if we sell our hardware right now and we don't let prices fall further, we might be able to recover the costs and turn out in the profitability range, but then you have to factor in like what did warehouses cost, what did air conditioning cost, how much did you pay anyone working for you? I mean, you had to have some IT like people helping to run things, or maybe you're the IT person. You didn't necessarily lose a ton of money, but you're certainly not ranking in the dough. And here's the AMD side of things. Again, a few less days mining with the last two columns. And again, everything's in the red. If you sold those cards today, most would go for at least the how much profit you made. That sell as you go line should be like your potential net profit. Okay. That's option number 3. Now, these are all kind of the more pessimistic views, or I don't know what you want to call them. What if you were super smart? What if you, and this is the final calculation, what if you were able to accurately predict, via hindsight, the maximum point at which to sell Ethereum over the past 2 years? And so when it hit $4,800, that's when you sold everything that you'd mined to that point. And then from there on out, you would sell at the local maximums. No one did this, right? That would just be, it's not possible to predict the future. But this is the best case, absolute best case scenario for these cards using the same mining performance. You sold everything at the optimal time, and how much would you make? So that's what this final set of slides is. All right. Does it look better with me down here? I don't know. We'll go with that for a second. So 3090, if you maximized your profit, you still got the card, and you could have made up to $10,000. $9,500 on the 3080, $4,800 on the 3070, $4,300 on the 3060 Ti, and finally $1,700 even with an RTX 3060. No one's going to have made that much, but it does show that some people made money. And that's where, that first slide, this is, as far as I'm concerned, this is gambling. Maybe some people love gambling. I know they do. But basically, you're trying to predict the future and decide when to sell, when to hold, and all that stuff. If you did it right, you could have made quite a bit of money. I mean, a single 3090 could have made up to $10,000, even if you say more pessimistically, certainly $5,000. If you got in at the start, if you mined heavily, and if you sold before Ethereum crashed down to, the current rates of $1,000, you could have sold at $3,000 pretty easily at the start of this year. AMD side of things, similar story. Not quite as high profits because their mining speeds were somewhat lower. They're similar to like a 3070 or 3060 Ti, around 60-65 mega hash per second. So again, up to $4,000-ish maximum. Realistically, he could have certainly made $2,000, and that's after paying for the hardware. Oh, also, I should note that I put the MSRPs in here, so maybe you got lucky and got the cards at MSRP. Maybe you were a big mining farm and you cut a deal with ASUS, or probably more likely MSI and Gigabyte, because I've seen a lot of mining farm pictures that had Gigabyte and MSI cards. Maybe you went straight to card manufacturer and you said, here's $1 million and we want to buy cards and we'll pay you, this much over MSRP. So certainly miner farms did cut deals like that. So they got better prices on the hardware, which means that the profits are higher. So I put in GPU MSRP. This is, again, best case scenario. Even the 6600 XT could have turned $200 in profit. Probably didn't, but it could have. All right, that's basically it. So if you're a miner, I'm not saying you're a bad person, but, like any of these businesses, big businesses, how much power did all this use? I mean, if you had hundreds of 3090 cards or 3080 cards cranking away for 2 years, 18 months, like that is a ton of power. They're saying Ethereum, I think at present, or maybe it's Bitcoin, they estimate it uses more power than the entire country of Finland and a bunch of other countries besides. And what's it doing for global warming? Well, it's not helping. and it's not really doing anything productive if you're like, data centers sit idle and they do use power, but also data centers do run the internet, and that's useful work. People like the internet. But crunching cryptocurrencies, it's funny money. So how much is it worth? It's what the market will pay for it, which goes back to a comment that came from Mike. No such thing as a scalper. It's called perfect price competition. I mean, you can call it whatever you want. People were buying cards at lower prices and selling them for higher prices. If you look on eBay right now, prices have come way down. Like here, we'll do it live quickly. 3090 right now. Last 2 weeks. Sorry. Well, yeah. Let's do the last week. 3090s have been selling. I gotta change my price filters. Come on. So this is sold auctions. Average price of a 3090 in the last week was $1,050. There are cards being sold for as little as, there's one that says $650. I don't know if that card actually works or not. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. There are other cards being sold for as much as $2,000. Why would someone pay $2,000 for a Founders Edition 3090 on June 27th? I don't know. Maybe eBay's lying and that didn't actually sell because, sometimes auctions end, they get marked as sold and then the buyer doesn't pay, and so no money exchanges hands, and so it's not really sold. But taking all those caveats in place, the 3090 averaged roughly $1,050 during the last week. Even if you look at the last month, same filters, it's saying $1,100. So the advent of the 3090 Ti combined with the plummeting cryptocurrency prices mean that miners are definitely trying to get out and sell their hardware for as much as they still can, as quickly as they can. The 3080, if you look at that for the last few weeks on eBay, over the last month, average price was $730. Over the last week, the average price was $710, so it dropped another $20. And if you go and look at eBay right now, there are plenty of 3080 cards for under $700. They're all used for mining, probably. How safe are those? Would you want to buy one and try and refurbish it? That's up to you. I wouldn't, but because you can go out and buy a brand new 3080 for like $800 from EVGA. I think that's their going price. So GPU prices, as we've said in the recent shows, they continue to plummet, and we don't expect that to really slow down anytime soon. 6900 XT, another card, in the last week, it's been selling at under $775. So the MSRPs are now kind of becoming meaningful, and even in some cases not meaningful, because now the MSRPs on a lot of cards are too high. 3080 Ti is selling below MSRP, 3090 Ti is selling below MSRP. 3090 kind of has stopped being manufactured because it was the original that had 24 GDDR6X chips, and that was proven to be not like a great way of doing things. The memory got really hot. So anyway, those cards are more or less not being sold anymore, but if you could buy them at buy a new one, they're going pretty close to the $1,500 MSRP. So, this is, Mike says the miners did not set these prices. The channel set these prices, chasing crypto. That's true, but the only people that were buying these prices were the people using them for mining, or buying them for gaming, but using them to mine on the side. And, whether you say that it's miners or crypto, it's the same, Mike. The reason the prices were high was because demand was super high, was because cryptocurrency was looking profitable. And so now that cryptocurrency looks like a terrible idea, because most cards are at the break-even point right now after power. And, wear and tear and all that stuff factors in. Do you want to heat up your house with graphics cards running? All sorts of reasons to stop mining, or your warehouse. I mean, if you were a mining farm with a large warehouse and you had hundreds of GPUs in there and they're all cranking away using hundreds of watts a piece, that's a ton of energy. And you have to cool that energy in the summertime. If you're in the northern hemisphere now, you have to cool that with air conditioning as well. So you're not just paying for the power of the cards, you're paying for the power of the cooling, and you're paying for the warehouse space. And factor all of those together, plus your IT infrastructure and all that stuff. I don't think you could mine with 3080 and still be making a profit today. It'd be very close. It wouldn't be something where you'd bet the farm on it, and you certainly wouldn't be buying more cards. And that is why GPU prices are falling. They've fallen over 50% since the start of the year. They'll probably fall further. Hopefully, it pushes down the RTX 40 series and RX 7000 series when those launch. But that didn't happen when Turing launched right after the 2017-2018 crypto boom and bust. So I don't know that I expect that to happen this year, but hopefully, like a 4080, I'm hopeful that the MSRP won't be more than $1,000, and maybe it could be less. But given that it's 5 nanometer or 4 nanometer TSMC, I think those prices have gone up at least 10%, and because of that, Nvidia will pass on a more than 10% increase in MSRP. So that's about it. Any other questions, people? Yeah, see, I'm with you. Chishiti, whatever. I don't know how to pronounce your name. I'm with you. I'm getting slightly hopeful. Not really hopeful, but slightly. I mean, Nvidia has done surprises in the past. The GTX 980 Ti, no, 1080 Ti. One of those, both of those actually, were relatively competitively priced. I mean, the 980 launched at 550, I think, or 500. And the 980 Ti launched at 700 or 650, something like that. So it wasn't a huge jump in price. And when you look at the performance offered, here, I'll pull it up so I can actually give the actual numbers. So yeah, the 980 Ti launched at 650, it was like almost a year after the 980 that had launched at 550. And it was a solid 20 to 30% faster is my recollection. And so that was like an amazing card for its time. It was a Titan card, which was selling, the Titan X was selling at $1,000. And so all of a sudden you got Titan X performance. It was like 2% slower than the Titan X, and it cost $350 less. It was wonderful. And you could even try triple card SLI, 4-way SLI, which was kind of stupid because SLI was more for benchmarking. Anyway, we won't go into that. 1080 launched at $600 in 2016, and then they cut the price to $500 like about a year later, and right around the same time, like a month before, they launched the 1080 Ti at a price of $700. So, again, not a huge jump in price. And everyone thought that was great. So the Ti cards were the ones to get. You'd go, oh, don't get the 980, wait for the 980 Ti. I mean, people didn't necessarily say that for the 980 Ti, but they certainly did for the 1080 Ti, because we saw how awesome the 980 Ti was. And then along comes the 20 series, which again was right after the 2017 crypto boom. And the 2080 Ti launches at the same time as the 2080. And the 2080 had an $800 price tag for the Founders Edition, a $700 price tag for the not Founders Edition, which came like a month or two later. And then the 2080 Ti was $1,200. Like, that was a huge step up in price. And people were very offended at that. And I won't even bring up the just buy it thing. That was a debate that was supposed to be kind of done in a humorous way. There were two alternative viewpoints, and people got angry for someone suggesting you should just go and buy it as the, devil's advocate or whatever. I thought it was kind of funny at the time, and now I work for Tom's Hardware, which I didn't at the time. But no, I wouldn't just go out and buy the 4080 or the 4090 when they launch. I'd see what they offer and see what your hardware is and decide then. And it depends on what you've got. If you've already got a 3080, whether you paid $1,000 or $1,500 or $700 for it, like, you might be able to skip this next generation and not feel like you're missing much. If you have a card that's like a 1080 Ti, this might be a good time to upgrade, and it will depend very much on the price. And it will also depend on the power. I mean, if the 4090 uses 600 watts of power, like, even if you've got a high-end PC, that is a lot of heat. I know in the summertime, my office gets very warm, which is why I normally have a fan running in here. And try and keep myself from sweating. Or turn up the AC, turn down the AC, whatever you want to say. Anyway, yeah. What other questions do we have? I got to look over here. $3080 for almost $1,000 is 5x the GPU component price alone to the AIB, and I don't know what you mean by the GPU component price. You talking just the GPU chip, I guess? Yes, but you don't actually just buy the GPU chip from Nvidia. You actually buy the GPU chip and the memory, is my understanding. They sell those as a package deal, and they don't disclose those GPU component prices. That is secret stuff. People guess at them. Like, I think at launch, the estimated bill of materials for creating an RTX 3080 was probably around $400. Prices have maybe dropped since then, but you got to remember GDDR6X is only used by NVIDIA, so that means it's not produced as much. It's only done by Micron, I think. And of course, the chip itself, they can set the price on. Like the GA 102 chip that's used in the high-end 3090, 3080. I mean, it's a 628 millimeter square chip, but it's made on a previous gen 12 nanometer process. So it's like less expensive than 7 nanometer would have been, but it's still a big chip. I can't remember what the math is, but you get something like 100 of those per wafer max. And, the wafers probably cost several $1,000s, even though they're 12 nanometer. Versus like the 7 nanometer chips cost, well, at the time they probably cost more than twice as much as a 12 nanometer. And then as we're going to 5 nanometer, like, the word is they're well over twice the cost of a 7 nanometer wafer. So it's like, if you have a 300, 400 millimeter squared chip on 5 nanometer compared to a 600 millimeter on 7 nanometer compared to an 800 millimeter on 12 nanometer, the cost per chip is still going to be probably lowest on the 12 nanometer, just because the wafer prices, the mature process doesn't cost as much. But I mean, they made a ton of money in the past few years. There's no question of that. Nvidia and AMD took a big chunk of the profits. The AIBs also took a big chunk of the profits. And then their suppliers took a big chunk of the profits too, because, they were on contracts. And so, they would buy it at one price and they'd sell it at a higher price. They wanted to make money, and those margins all went up. So instead of making 10%, they were making 20, 30, 40%, I suspect, in some cases. And yeah, that's about it for the week. Any other questions? I'm going to sign off, and I'm going to go enjoy July 4th and a family reunion and a vacation. And then we'll get back to things in 2 weeks. I don't expect a whole lot exciting to happen in the GPU space other than falling prices until probably September. I mean, we might see new GPUs as early as August, but realistically, I think September is more likely, maybe even October. Nvidia likes to launch no later than October for their big new series. Like the 20 series and the 30 series all launched in August or September. for the 80 cards, like the 80 and 90 cards, the top end stuff. The 900 series launched in October. The Pascal, the 10 series, I think launched in the spring. That one was like back when we were still on the 1.5-year cycle, right? They launched in June of 2016, I believe, somewhere around there. All right, guys and gals and others, have a great week. Enjoy your celebrations if you're in the US. Don't blow yourself up. If you're not in the US, have a great week anyway. And we will see you all next time.